This bike is for these backcountry roads. City cruising for sure, taking it to a bike night and impressing everyone when they have no idea how old it is. That's fun, but this is where the bike shines. This is where you get the most smiles per gallon, if you will. Hi friends, Dylan from Throttle Company here in Columbus, Ohio, back again for another episode of In the Loop, where we take a motorcycle around our little test ride route and talk about it. Talk about how cool it is, talk about how interesting it is. Really my whole concept of this is to show you what it's like to ride this bike, because maybe you'll never get to, or maybe you've been thinking about it and you were thinking about buying one or whatever, looking for one, you always wanted to know. So the one we got a couple of bikes out here because it's January 13th 2022 and the weather is fantastic. I can't believe it. So we're here at Columbus, Ohio. Like I said, it's like almost 40 today, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's riding weather. We've got a bunch of bikes in the queue. We got a bunch of Meteors delivered recently. We had 17 bikes delivered and we have another 7 on the way. 7 more Meteors. So if you want a Meteor, this is the place, but we have to go out and test ride them, and some of these were sitting in there while the snow was on the ground. Anyway, today's bike, the Meteor is great because we'll talk about it here in a second, but today's bike is a 2012 Royal Enfield Bullet, but the classic 500 model of the Bullet. So it's a 500 single, and this for many years was Royal Enfield. So Royal Enfield started in 1901, and then they started a production facility in India in 1954, shut down, and they were made in England at that time, and then England and India. Then in 1970 they shut down British production, moved everything to India, and essentially since that point, 1970, only made one motorcycle in different versions, and it was the Bullet, either in a 350cc or a 500cc. Then they made a change right around 2010-11. They added fuel injection to them, and this is kind of one of those like early generation fuel injected Bullets. So it's a single, it's a very classic design, and in some sense outdated, but it was retro. It's a classic looking bike. I mean, this looks, if you get closer and you see the details of the turn signals and electronics and stuff, it looks a little more modern. But if you look from here, this is a bike from the 50s and 60s, right? And it just looks that way, and it performs like a modern bike with the fuel injection and everything like that. So this is the person who's buying this. It's the kind of person who wants the looks of a 50s, 60s bike, a very classic bike with the chrome and the gold accents, and but they want a little bit more reliability of fuel injection and modern technology. Modern at the time in 2012 is actually probably outdated, if I'm honest, at the time, but a big step forward for Royal Enfield. Then 2018 they come out with this bike, which happens to be a customer's bike, great customer of ours, Al, and they make the Himalayan. So that was the first like new model that they had done since 1970, really. They made a Thunderbird, which is sort of essentially a Bullet, but anyway, the modern version of this bike, at least for now, is the Meteor. They made a classic 350 version of this. There's apparently a 600 in the works. I think at some point they'll do a 500 single. A lot of things are going on, but that Meteor basically represents what's the current version of this. Brand new engine, brand new platform, brand new riding position. You can see the foot controls are a little bit more forward and stuff, a little bit more relaxed. Handles a lot better. So anyway, speaking of, this bike is for sale. We just picked this up. It was a guy locally here in Columbus that I knew. I'd seen him at a couple of bike nights. He brought his beautiful bike. We took a bunch of photos of it, and then he's moving, so he's downsizing his collection. He sold this to us. So we own this bike. It's going to be for sale. This is my inaugural test drive. We started it up. I cleaned it up yesterday. Gave it a little bit of a bath and then cleaned the chrome. The chrome is just so nice. Hopefully that comes across in the video. I know for a fact that the guy is originally from India, actually right by where they manufacture these in a place called Chennai, and I think he said he bought these from there and then he hand painted the logo on there. Speaking of hand painting, there's a couple videos online, maybe I'll link to one, all these stripes are hand painted. So I think it's two brothers in India in the factory, and they just hold up this tank and they go with this just elegant, simple brush. It's amazing how they do it. But all those tanks are hand painted, and they even were all the way up until 2020. The modern ones don't have the same pinstriping and stuff, so maybe they're a little bit different. But you got some cool accessories. This bike only has 3,000 miles. It has Avon Road Rider tires, so those are really the only major changes. He added this engine guard, very common upgrade, and then the exhaust is not stock, but it sounds good. Probably performs a little bit better. The guy that sold it to us joked that it gave it 1 more horsepower, so there you go. This has just been a meticulously well cared for bike. This guy has like 5 bikes, or had 5 bikes until he sold this one. He took great care of them all, and he was joking with us about you don't put a lot of miles on them when you only have 5 bikes, and I know that is true. So 3,000 miles. We're about to put a couple more on it. These bikes have a notoriously goofy system where you see the kickstand is up, the side stand, but it's on the center stand. It'll start like that. If you have this side stand down, it won't start. You don't get the fuel pump. So if you're sitting here going, oh, why won't my bike start? Sometimes that's the case, and it's tough when you're showing them off. Sometimes you forget that, and it'll just chug and chug and chug and never start. So we're in neutral here. We're on the side stand. Let me get a little closer so you can hear it. In India, they call this dug, 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 dug. So they call this the dug, dug, because it makes that kind of single cylinder dug, dug, dug noise. Yeah, you can hear that exhaust. A little bit more brappiness. It's cool. All right, we're gonna launch off our center stand there. We changed these mirrors. These are the modern mirrors, chrome. Just thought it went a little bit better with the bike. I rode this around the parking lot last night, and it was great. You can really tell if these bikes are tuned well, their slow speed manners, and how well they idle. And this one does all that perfectly. Ooh, got a little more power than I'm used to. These new mirrors are great. So it's interesting riding position. I'll get a chance to talk about it here because we'll stop at this light. But you're kind of forward on the tank. I hope you can see a little bit of that. I feel on top of the bike. It's a very classic riding position. If you ever watch Jay Leno's garage, he does a lot of stuff with motorcycles, and he would call this the sit up and beg. So I'm very upright. My chest is like a 90 degree, you know, my legs are just out in front of me. So you do look like a proper British gentleman riding this thing, which I think is exactly what you're going for. If you're the kind of person that wants this chrome, classic, 60s looking bike, then that's what you want. You want that kind of riding position. And to get the feeling of what it's like across, what it's like to ride one of these bikes, is it does feel like that. It feels like a bike from the 60s, you know what I mean? It runs fantastic. You can hear it. I just pushed the button once, and we didn't have to kick it. We didn't have to do anything to get it to run. It has this lever here, which even the Himalayans have, but none of the more modern ones have. But I didn't have to use that. So this thing is really tuned well and in good running condition. So you have that reliability of, I'm not worried about this thing dying on me or not being able to start it or something. But it does have the look and the style and the feeling of a bike from the 60s. I like that exhaust, honestly. He was joking about 1 horsepower, but there is something about it that, you know, a lot of times people add a more free-flowing exhaust, and I don't think they realize this, but you lose a lot of your mid-range power. It flows too freely. You need a little bit of back pressure. I don't know a ton about the back pressure, but I know from experience that bikes with free-flowing exhausts that have no other modifications tend to lose all their guts in the mid-range of the RPM. And this doesn't have that at all. That was when I made that first gear shift and I said there was a little more power than I was expecting. That's what I meant. Out of a Bullet, I didn't expect to have that pull still happening there, and this one's got it. So it really gets an A+ from me as far as a Bullet of this era and how well this thing runs and everything. It's great. And I'm sure a lot of that comes down to its previous owner. I know him personally. This is exactly the kind of bike that I want to buy. It was a no-brainer for us. A guy that I know personally, I've seen at bike nights, and I know how well he takes care of his stuff. He's got multiple bikes. He's an experienced motorcyclist. And he calls us up and says, what do you think about buying this? That's perfect. That's one of the cool things about our dealership. Has only been around a year and a half. And that's one of the cool things about being around for a little bit now, is people are starting to come to us and saying, hey, I got this bike I think you guys like. And this, you know, I never would have found this. I would have had to go on Facebook Marketplace or whatever and wait until he posted it to find this before. So it is awesome. It really handles, you know, honestly, so it's got Avon Road Rider tires on there. I don't know if you're a real tire snob. I'm not a big tire snob, but the one tire that I know I like is the Avon Road Riders. They have kind of a classic, but a little bit more on the sporty side look to them. We typically, if you've seen my other videos on the GB500, I put them on the GB500. We have a GB400, I put them on there. That's just my go-to tire if you want a classic look, but you don't want to compromise performance. They're just the ultimate for that. And that's what this has, and that's great. You can kind of feel how true they ride, how straight they are. I haven't done a lot of turns yet, but they feel good the way this bike turns in. This bike is interesting. You can kind of tell the way the handlebars are and the way the steering head is. They have just like infinite maneuverability at slow speed, like in the parking lot or in the garage. It's really cool, which is very much like a bike from a British bike from that time period. The BSAs do that as well. You can just maneuver them around in the garage effortlessly. They feel so light and nimble. It's that turning radius. This is fun. This is a fun bike. You get that mid-range power, man. It's funny because I don't think you need a lot of power out of a motorcycle. I really don't. I mean, we are a Royal Enfield dealer after all. But I think what you do want is consistent mid-range power. I think that and low-end torque, that gives you a fun riding experience. And that's what this bike's all about. That's why we go on this road. We call it the Loop, but it's this road out near the shop. And it's got these 90-degree turns, which actually kind of is annoying on a car. But on a motorcycle, it's fun. And so you get to go, you get to do little turns. This is, if you're thinking about buying a bike, this is the test ride route. So you get some straightaways, you get some higher speeds at the end here, but you get to take these 90-degree turns and see what the bike is like. And I don't want you to think you're racing or something, but you can take at your own pace and actually get to feel how well the bike turns. And that's what this bike is for. The Meteor is just like this, the newer version like I had mentioned. But this bike is for these backcountry roads. City cruising for sure, taking it to a bike night and impressing everyone when they have no idea how old it is. That's fun, but this is where the bike shines. This is where you get the most smiles per gallon, if you will. Let's get it up to top speed, see how it goes. I think I hit the rev limiter there. 60 miles an hour. I'm still in fourth, I think. Trying to avoid some of this dirt. It feels stable. Hopefully you can still hear me well. But it feels great. These tires are fantastic. Nice and stable. I think I'm in fifth now. Let's see. Yep, all the way in fifth there. 65, 70 miles an hour, almost. Felt great, felt stable. I did not feel like I was on a toy or a bicycle, you know, about to wobble to my death, which is obviously a good thing. But I think sometimes people think that about a bike like this. It's kind of vintage looking, but it's not vintage riding. It doesn't feel dangerous to be going that fast. Very fun. I love this bike. This one might be hard to sell. I thought that as soon as we went and picked it up. It's just beautiful. Like I said, hopefully that comes across on camera. This like deep burgundy red. I know sometimes reds are weird on photo or video, but it's kind of like a burgundy red, like a dark cherry, and then the chrome and the gold it's an amazing combination. I mean, it's just very classic looking, beautiful stuff. Maybe I'll put some, Nicole, our photographer and my business partner and everything, she took some photos of this thing, and they just turned out awesome. Maybe I'll post them up there and try to give you an idea of how good this bike looks. I think that's part of it. There's something interesting about riding a motorcycle. How it looks, how it makes you feel, definitely has an effect on how you feel while you're moving. It's not as though the bike disappears. Some of them do. Some bikes do that. They're just kind of a utility and disappears underneath you and you don't think about it and you're kind of just flying around. But this bike has character, and that character kind of never really goes away even when you're moving. Character is a big part of what makes this bike cool, or unique compared to other motorcycles. Some bikes have character for sure, of course, but the history, the character of this bike, we get people in all the time. There's Zach doing another test ride. He didn't want to wave to me, he was too cool. But the character and the history of this bike, we get people in constantly asking if we have any bullets. And they actually never brought they imported some of them, but they never brought the 350 to America. So people ask, oh, do you have any 350 bullets and stuff? We're supposed to be getting soon, like I said, it's January 2022. Sometime this year, we're supposed to be getting the Classic 350, which is as close as it gets. So they're calling it the Classic Reborn or the New Classic, which is kind of fun to say, New Classic. But the Meteor basically wearing this clothes, and I think it just looks gorgeous, and the Meteor rides so nice that I'm excited to see that motorcycle in person. I've told people I would buy it. We'll see. I might have to get in line because there's been a lot of people asking about it. Anyway, that's what I had said. This bike's going to be a tough one to sell, but I think it will sell quick because we get people in and constantly asking if we have any bullets, and they haven't made them. We only got one ever since in the history of our dealership, new. So basically we opened our dealership right as they had announced that they were discontinuing the bullet altogether. So a lot of people were disappointed. We had one, it was a Trials edition, so 500 Trials. It had the red frame and like silver paint. It was very cool. It was like a commemorative edition honoring one of the original Trials bikes by Johnny Britton, which is cool. But that's the character. If I can get across what it's like to ride this bike, it's an homage to Royal Enfield's past. This is a very classic, I mean, it's called Classic. This is a very classic motorcycle, and it's the heart and soul of what Royal Enfield was for over 50 years. And then they're still continuing that. I mean, Royal Enfield, all their motorcycles pretty much, you know, have the vintage classic look to them. And this one is just to the extreme. This is on the far edge of that classic look. Anyway, like I said, this one's for sale. I love talking about these bikes, so if you have any questions or want to know about these bikes, feel free to ask me in the comments. If you really fell in love with this one, you might have to pry it away from me, but please feel free to ask in the comments, and we could talk to you about what it would cost and how to get it to you and that kind of thing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching In the Loop, and I will see you next time.